Hello chess friends and welcome to Yazarov Chess Channel and welcome to an amazing tournament that started today. Welcome to the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals in 2021. So this will be an incredible tournament as we'll see 10 top grandmasters battling it out for the throne, and the cool part is it's again a rapid time format tournament in which you will have this one round robin system sort of, but it's not only one game per day. This one round robin is a match game in which 4 games have to be played, and then of course the winner is the one who has more points. If the match game after 4 games ends in a draw, then the players have to play 2 additional games, and then afterwards maybe even the so-called Armageddon game. So in the day 1 we had already a big derby. It was the match game between Magnus Carlsen and Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Maybe in some occasions this wouldn't be a big derby, but it's, I think, something worth to see and worth to follow, because in 2020 Jan-Krzysztof Duda stopped Magnus Carlsen's non-losing streak. Magnus Carlsen was unbeatable for 125 games in classical time format chess, and then Jan-Krzysztof Duda stopped that. And also in 2021 Jan-Krzysztof Duda surprised a little bit, I think, Magnus Carlsen by kicking him out in the semi-finals of the World Cup. So I think that Magnus Carlsen wants his revenge, at least a small revenge, because it's almost like, you know, when Michael Jordan used to say, I took it personal, and I think here Magnus Carlsen took also a little bit personal here. Now the match can be against Jan-Krzysztof Duda. He wants his revenge because recently we have seen sometimes when Magnus Carlsen is losing some games, like he lost maybe against Alireza Firouzja in one banter blitz session, then he wanted his revenge. He wanted really to break the top grandmaster who dared to win a match game against him. So that's why this was, in my opinion, a big derby. I wanted to see really Magnus Carlsen reaction, how he's going to play against Jan-Krzysztof Duda after getting kicked out from the semi-finals of the World Cup. So let's check out now what happened. In my opinion, it was really a brilliant match game between the two of them. So here d4 played by Magnus. This is now our first game of the 4 match games that they had to play. So here after move d4 we have knight to f6 by Duda. We have c4 after e6, knight to c3, and here maybe many of us would expect maybe the Nimzo Indian system with the move bishop to b4, but here in the continuation of the game Duda decided to go into the queen's gambit, declined into maybe more firm and fixed setup in the continuation of the game. Here it's a static game already in the center. The move bishop to b4 would lead, I think, into more dynamic game. So here after move d5 Magnus goes into this exchange variation, which is also sometimes really hard to play against, because after e takes d5 the pawn structure gets more and more symmetrical, static and similar stuff, so it's really hard to play the game for both sides. There are not so many great attacking opportunities for both sides. That's, I think, the main problem of these types of structures. That's why here after move c takes d5 Duda took with the knight took d5, keeps a little bit the position unbalanced in the center, keeps the position a little bit tense, because if you play now e4, that wasn't played in the game, but it would lead, I think, into the normal Tarrasch defense, into normal Tarrasch structures. After the e4 Black would probably play, of course, knight takes c3, b takes c3, and now with c5 would it actually reach the Tarrasch defense with a different move. Or after c5 here knight to f3, maybe something like c takes d4, and now bishop to b4 would lead into the normal Tarrasch setup. But here Magnus Carlsen also surprised, I think, a little bit to Duda with the next move. He played simply knight to f3, and here c5 immediately by Duda, playing in the normal Tarrasch setup. Now it's basically becoming a semi-Tarrasch idea here by Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Here after move c5 Magnus simply protects the center with the move e3. We have c takes d4, e takes d4, and now a little bit of a surprise. And when you maybe analyze now the position with the top engine suggests also this move that Jan-Krzysztof Duda is playing, knight takes c3, b takes c3, but I really never liked this move for black. I've played several times the position from white's perspective, and I always like here my setup, this c3 d4 pawn structure. Then I can bring my bishop here on d3, then I have these 2 diagonals with both of these bishops. The cool part about the game for white here is, I think, that black doesn't have any more defenders in front of the king. Then you would love, of course, to have your knight somewhere here on f6. So I simply always liked the development that white gains here. So in this continuation after b takes c3 here, Jan-Krzysztof Duda simply continuing the pressure against this backward pawn on c3, which is now, of course, the main weakness. And you can, of course, advance now the pawn with the move c4. We would then have now the so-called hanging pawn structure. The main goal of this pawn structure from white's perspective would be, of course, to get some space advantages, and from black's perspective the main goal would be simply continuing the pressure against this two pawns, maybe by playing something like bishop to a6 or similar stuff. Here I think we'll see now Magnus Carlsen's brilliancy, and that's why I mean a little bit that Magnus took it personally here a little bit with the next couple of moves, because here Magnus already plays a great theoretical novelty. At least I'm not seeing any games in the database in this particular line. Here Magnus pull off now a brilliant exciting move, rook to b1, because many times in the Grunfeld defense, and the Grunfeld and the Tarrasch defense have similar pawn structures, not the same, but many times a similar pawn structure appeals. Here the problem is always this b file, and the problem is you cannot move the bishop, then you lose the b7 pawn. So that's why in the Tarrasch Grunfeld structures, this bishop on c8 is a little bit stuck then on the square, on the starting square. We can never really get out on d7. So you could maybe now try here the move queen takes c3, but it doesn't bring you so much, I think, because you get simply bishop to d2, you getting your queen again kicked away. After queen to c7 and bishop to d3, we can now say several things about the position. You see now in this particular scenario, okay, white has lost a pawn, but I think white has a great compensation. All of these minor pieces are out, so we have now 3 pieces out already in the game. The rook is very active, can of course also be used maybe in the continuation of the game on the c file, and we are one move far away from fully development. We can castle, and I think it's a great compensation. Look at the bishop here, simply aiming towards black's king. Really great setup. So as I said, as a compensation, I think taking out the pawn on c3 is here simply not an option for Jan-Krzysztof Duda. So here, after move rook to b1 in the continuation, we have knight to d7. You see Duda is trying to get a new piece here in front of the king, getting the knight on f6, where it can be used, of course, as a good defensive piece in front of the king. So now bishop to d3. Here Magnus is again provoking Duda with the same idea. If you want to take queen takes c3, now bishop to d2 is of course not working, because you're losing a little bit the connection between the queen and the bishop. But exactly that happened. After move queen takes c3, Magnus Carlsen had this prepared at home, probably somewhere, king to f1. And again, it's again a sacrificing idea. We have lost the pawn, but basically the idea hasn't changed. Still, I think white has a great development. All of these pieces are very active. Although the dark blue bishop hasn't played so far in the game, still it's a long range piece, so that's why it still is attacking towards the king side. So still these 3 pieces that are dancing in front of black's queen are simply great. And in the continuation of the game, we can use even rook to b3 in order to kick away further the queen. Maybe something like bishop to g5, h4, h5 are now opportunities, h4, h5, rook to h3, rook to g3. So the setup that white is gaining for this lost pawn is, I think simply great. Although the engine like here, of course, more a little bit black's position, but you have to really play now a perfect game in order to get out of this tactical mess that Magnus Carlsen has prepared here. So it's very interesting. We're now in move 11, and the game is already wild. So here in the continuation, bishop to e7. So did I say I have now a pawn? Now it's time to simply secure the king by castling. So we have now h4 castling, and now rook to h3. Here now comes one of the critical moments. Here comes a very unnecessary move, but in my opinion I would play that move for sure if I would be black. That's why this move is really wild. In the continuation, Duda played the normal knight to f6, protecting simply his king further, but that's actually the main mistake. The main square that you have to protect is the e5 square, because in order to activate all the pieces, Magnus has to play knight to e5 and then get the queen maybe to g4 or to h5. Then Magnus would have a perfect game. But when you leave, of course, with the move knight to f6, your e5 unprotected, now it's time simply for Magnus to use that square. So maybe a better idea would be something like queen to c7, because even if you would have tried here something like queen to e2, or if you try maybe something like rook to g3, let's see, this idea with ideas to play maybe bishop to h6, then you get challenged immediately with the move bishop to d6, and you have to retreat. Knight to e5 is not working, as you see this square is simply taken by these three pieces. The knight is controlling the square, the bishop is, and also the queen. These three pieces are controlling this very important square on the board. So that's why knight to f6, it's really incredible that it's a huge mistake. It's a natural move, but it's a huge blunder, and Magnus uses now this moment immediately, plays now knight to e5, because queen takes d4 is never an opportunity. Bishop to h7 is happening, and then you lose simply the queen. So that's why here with the move knight to f6, actually Duda helped out Magnus to activate all of the pieces. And look at this setup now. This rook is, wow, this bishop is dangerous, this bishop is dangerous, this knight is dangerous, the queen is dangerous, is getting dangerous, the rook is dangerous. So all of these pieces are really wild all over the board, they're dancing all over the board. So it's a perfect now setup for a great attacker like Magnus is. Of course, after move knight to e5, we have now queen to f5, rook to g3, king to h8, getting out of this potential tactical mess. Even if you try here something like knight to e8, it's helping out, I think, for a while, but we can simply play something like h5, or we can play even bishop to h6. It's a great opportunity. If you try something like f5, bishop to b5, I think is winning the game here for white for sure, because we want to take out this one. The knight on e8 is of course a great protector of the g7 square. So that's why after f4 nothing dramatically changed. Rook to g4, king to h8, we can takes, and now after queen to c2 the game is, I think, over, because you can never really take out this one. You get simply knight to f7, and it would be a beautiful checkmate. This move knight to f7 is now very important to recognize, because it will become actually the main attacking motif now of Magnus Carlsen. Here after move rook to g3, here king to h8, we have bishop to g5, trying to activate now all of the pieces. If you try now, that wasn't played in the game, if you try now maybe b6 to finally get this bishop into the game, because we have said in the beginning that the lack of development of the light for bishop is sometimes a problem in Tarrasch Grünfeld structures. After move b6, it's not so good, because you get simply bishop to f6, and now queen to h5, trying this checkmate on h7. Even if you try to cover, you get simply tactical lost. Bishop takes g6, f takes g6, knight takes g6. We're breaking through, and it's simply game over. So here in the continuation, after move rook to g3, we have, as I said, bishop to g5, h6, and now Magnus Carlsen calculated this tactic very well. Bishop to h6, after g takes h6, we have queen to f3, and in this position, believe me or not, it was in move 18. In this position, Jan-Krzysztof Duda resigned. Really wild stuff. What to say? Let's see possible continuation. If you try to compete on the g file, as we said, knight to f7 is the main tactical motif. What to do here? Maybe something like I don't know, knight to g8 is also maybe an opportunity, but queen to f7, that's also a nice tactical motif, because after here rook takes f7, knight to f7, you see all of the squares are taken, the king is again checkmate. So the main motif, as I said, queen to f7, queen to h5 are opportunities. So it's simply a position that you have to resign here from Black's perspective. So Magnus got his revenge, I think, a little bit for losing against Jan-Krzysztof Duda recently in very important games. And Magnus Carlsen won the day one against Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Congratulations to Magnus. He played really brilliant chess in the day one. This was also a very interesting idea, how to beat the Tarrasch structures, how to beat Grünfeld Tarrasch structures like this. Incredible game by the world champion, and I would love to see him now continuing to play like this, because when we see Magnus playing like this, I think we can expect really some brilliant games. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. Really great stuff. If you want to see more attacking abilities from chess history, check out my commented chess games, the best chess games of all time series. And if you want to see maybe the top engines battling it out in their best chess games, check out my commented chess games played by computer series, with some great games played by Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, Stockfish, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.